Sitting here, I'm right directly in front of the speakers, a number of people have said that this was going to be a difficult decision for me to make and the remainder of the committee. As it so happens, I've not found it quite so difficult. Weighing it all in the balance, I conclude that the evidence that I have read, I have seen, I have heard, would have led me, if I'd had the opportunity, irresistibly to make a proposition of refusing this application. I believe it was up to Third Energy to prove their case, and I'm sad to say that I think you've fallen well short of the mark in doing so. This is a classic case of an application with branded all over it cumulative uncertainty, and in those circumstances I would have liked to have been able to have on the table refusal. Having said that, if Councillor Heseltine, supported by Councillor Blaze's proposition for approval fails, then you know then one will come forward for refusal. I've heard what the Chief Operating Manager, John Dewar, I believe his name was, said about 20 years' experience of producing gas in Rydell without problems. But none of those 20 years has involved fracking and all that it entails. And we have had plenty, we've heard plenty about this in these last 2 days. So yes, 20 years of uneventful extraction of gas, but never once have you dipped your toe into the fracking pot. And that's the concern. That's the difference one word has made. So let me go on and say what I think the arguments are from my point of view. I must start with the planning officer's report, and I have to compliment her and her team on what has been and continues to be a massive task involving huge amounts of extra work, no doubt on top of the day job. However, whilst recognising the huge effort that's been involved, this does not mean I can agree with what its content says or its recommendation, although of course I fully recognise she is entitled to her professional opinion. As a member of the Planning Committee, I am entitled to take an alternative view if I can support it with arguments, and I do. I do take that alternative view. This application, I would have hoped, would have been recommended for refusal. In truth, I must say, and this is my observations, I found the content of the Planning Officer's report a little disappointing. It appears that its conclusions rely far too heavily on the applicant's evidence, more so than I've seen in my 20-year career of being on 2 planning committees up in the Dales National Park and at Richmondshire, and having considered and decided, I would suggest, about 3,500 planning applications. For example, I see that the applicants suggest their proposed operation will have neutral or slight impacts locally. I find that absolutely hard to believe. We've heard of 150 HGVs moving backwards and forwards, probably in the course of a couple of days. We've seen what will be, in my view, akin to Southampton docks built in that wonderful slice of countryside when they pile up the shipping containers. You do wonder how many of those who have written those recommendations live within 75 miles of the site, let alone 750 yards. On the other hand, we have heard from a number of experts supporting refusal, some brought in by Frack Free Rydell and other campaign groups, some simply local residents in Rydell. I've got to say, it seems to me there's a very large number of professors and medical practitioners of note living in the district of Rydale. We haven't quite so many in Richmondshire, I'd have to say. But they hold opinions, and their opinions are worthy of being listened to, and I'm not sure that we have. They, to me, speak with distinguished authority about the great uncertainty around fracking, and based on the precautionary principle that must guide our action, they say this application should be refused. However, the planning officer's report, in each case, they get the same treatment. The report relies on the applicant's evidence and their consultants and the statutory consultees, and dealing with the objections, they're turned to one side with the consolation remarks that those objections are either reasonable or understandable. That's all they get. I think they're worth a lot more than that, and I'm not sure they've been given the weight that they should have been in the report. Frankly, I have to say, I expected greater scrutiny, greater challenge from this, the County Planning Authority. It seems to me we've been too easily satisfied here as a County Planning Authority, far too easily satisfied, and we haven't gone the extra mile in making the challenge to make sure what we're being told stacks up, and I don't think that it does.